Hello and welcome to STAKEOUT, a bi-weekly podcast bridging the gap between video games, culture, history, and more. Each week we discuss a video game subject through the lens of what inspired it. My name is Dave Chaffins, and joining me is my co-host, Austin O'Connor. How you doing, Austin?
What's going on, man? This is different.
Welcome to the new show.
We got a whole new studio.
We got a whole new studio. A whole new setup.
We moved to a new city just to do this.
It's a brand new, we leave Charleston city limits.
We didn't think this one through. I don't think.
No, we
I
didn't.
think this would have been completely possible from where we were, but
I don't think that we go to the state border and then we sit there and then we cross the line. So if you didn't know, this is the first episode that we're doing of a brand new podcast. So originally we did Vault Boys WV, the internet viral sensation. As you know it,
we created hashtag That's My Sloth. You've probably
heard of that.
Heard of it at some point.
Vault Boys WV, which is a Fallout 76 lore and West Virginia history podcast. And so, what we're doing with this new podcast is we really enjoyed doing the research and the connections and talking about a video game in its connections and inspirations in real life. And so, in between the weeks that we're doing Vault Boys, which Vault Boys is not going away. I said this on the last episode of Vault Boys. We're still doing Vault Boys. Next week, there'll be a new episode of Vault Boys. But here, through January through March, in the weeks in between Vault Boys, we are starting a brand new podcast called STAKEOUT. And you were listening to the very first episode. Are you excited? Are you hype? You look hype over there.
I'm ready.
You're ready.
This is, like I said, it's different.
It's different. Well, we wanted to
be fun to.
We wanted to do something that we felt like that maybe, we didn't want to get so caught up in Fallout and caught up in that world and then get burnt out on that. I've played a lot more of that. Yeah. You're kicking up with playing that now, so
finally.
Now
we'll get into that in a few minutes.
We'll get into that.
But it's a thing that I feel like. As vast and expansive as Fallout is, there's only so much we can talk about it, in such a short period of time. We need to break it up a little bit. And
so this is the natural progression of what it is. So You will still get the same things that you got from Vault Boys, which was you're going to get us talking about a video game and us talking about the inspirations and history behind it. Now, it's not going to be as literal as West Virginia, and we probably won't be... I won't necessarily that we're very smart at the West Virginia stuff, but it may not be as well experienced in the subjects that we cover. But each week we're going to talk about a different video game subject. And so this week we have a very special one planned. We'll get to that in a minute. But we'll be taking a video game subject, and we can revisit them in different episodes of the podcast, different, the same game, but a different subject from that game. And we're kind of diving deep. We have I think we have 6 episodes, planned and ready to go. We've got ideas for everything to delve into. But that's going to be the meat of this podcast. I guess the in-between segment to warm you up is each week, whatever video game we're playing that's not Fallout 76 specifically. We're not going to talk to you about Fallout 76. This is the last time I'll mention it, except at the end. We're going to bring in a game that we've been playing and discuss one little fact from it. So one little inspiration, one little piece of history that comes along with it. So that way you can keep up to date and it can be kind of a fun little segment that we'll do. So
what have you been playing?
So Austin, it was the end of the year.
Mm-hmm.
I've been playing a lot of Fallout 76 and I decided
you don't say. Mr. Level 123?
126. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I don't want any Mondo Burger talking here. Right. Now, been playing some of the backlog. Been going through Spider-Man. Been going through some Tomb Raider. But the one I want to talk to you about today was Yakuza. So are you familiar with Yakuza?
I'm not.
Yakuza is a semi-open world game where you are involved in a Yakuza plot. So you are a main character. You may not be, you are kind of a member of the Yakuza, but most of the time you're framed for murder or something. But you're following this deep Yakuza gangster storyline. So there's families that come and they want to do karate and beat you up or shoot you frame you for something or steal from you.
day.
But then, like, on the other hand, like, you go to karaoke bars and do, like, fantastical renditions of songs, or
it's all about balance.
Yeah, or run a real estate company and meet with the different people, or make friends with the attendant at the bowling alley. So it's like, I would say it is a lot. It's like GTA meets Animal Crossing.
Yeah.
In a way,
it's like that makes perfect sense, but it doesn't. But
it does. Time. So one of the things, it's like over the top. That's the point of it.
Well, it sounds just slightly.
It's supposed to be over the top, but each character that you play as and a lot of the boss enemies in the game all have tattoos. Now, and it's like real dramatic because in that game when stuff is getting serious, like they'll be fighting each other and they're not. Everybody's wearing like suits. Yeah. And they're all just fighting each other because they're all well dressed because they're in the Yakuza. And so it's getting real when you get to the final boss and they both rip their shirts off and they're like shirtless dudes and they're fighting each other and they've got the Yakuza tattoos.
Oh, yeah?
And so the Yakuza tattoos themselves, the main character for most of the game is this guy named Kazuma Kiryu. And Kazuma Kiryu is the self-claimed and also called Dragon of Dojima.
Sounds kind of like he's full of himself.
Well, the thing is, he's the player character for most every game, and he beats everybody up, and everybody just collectively knows throughout this game that's had like maybe like 7 or 8 entries at this point. I think it's 8 entries at this point. I'm probably missing some, but everybody knows that he beats everybody up. Like that's
just like a common knowledge.
That's his thing. It's like, oh, here he comes again.
He's gonna whoop all of us.
It's the freaking Dragon of Dojima. So he is a giant dragon on his back, obviously. There's other characters like Goro Majima, who is this crazy man who originally you play as in Yakuza 0, but then later on he becomes the rival, kind of like how Gary is your rival in Pokemon,
Yeah.
Jaffiel, where he shows up randomly.
Hold on. Did you say
Jaffiel? Yeah, I did say Jaffiel.
We're just going to move past it.
All right, that's fine. So he'll show up and give him, like, try to fight him by some way. So, like, I was playing the game last night, and I was walking down the street, and they're like, stop, it's the police. And I turn around, and it's the dude dressed up like a police officer. And he's like, if you have any weapons on you, I'm going to fight you. And I had, like, a pistol on me. And the guy was like, now I'm going to fight you. So he has a tattoo on his back that is of a dog, and he's called the Mad Dog. Similarly, the rival, his other rival, Nikishi, is what they call it. He is a full.
I'm not gonna remember it.
You're not gonna remember the names. The names don't matter. The dude has a big old, I think it's a red koi fish on the back of him, and the legend behind that is the koi fish swam up the stream to go fight. I think it was like to fight the dragon or something at the industry. So it's like personal journey of him going against the Yakuza to gain power. And so the Yakuza tattoos are indicative of their personality. And that's the same for in real life. Members of the Yakuza get these tattoos, and it's not necessarily about the Yakuza itself, but it's about their personal journey and their personal history. So when a member needs a tattoo, they go to the tattoo artist, and they actually have interviews where the tattoo artist interviews them, asks them about their life, talks to them about the different styles that they could do and the inspirations and stuff, and plans out these full body tattoos. And so, like, I was reading an article that was interviewing one of the tattoo artists for the Yakuza, and he actually would, like, sometimes incorporate money onto kids who grew up poor, because they wanted to keep wealth for the rest of their life. And so he would, like, incorporate some sort of, like, personal tie-in, even if it's not particular to, even if it's not like, I want to be the freaking dragon of Dojima, kind of thing. And one other thing that I thought was interesting, other than the tattoos themselves being real, is that a lot of the Yakuza think that the Western style tattoos, so like the tattoo that I have on my leg, or like something like minuscule that's not full body, are just called fashion tattoos. just rather luxury. Rather than Yakuza tattoos.
Yeah, they're just kind of a luxury.
Right.
Like.
So that's my fact I brought in.
Right,
I thought it was interesting.
All right, that's cool. Wow. It's funny because you said that we weren't going to talk about Fallout, but we're about to talk about Fallout.
Well, we're not going to talk about Fallout 76. But we're going to talk about Fallout.
We're going to talk about Fallout in general.
That sounds good.
So it's funny being on a Fallout podcast. Mm-hmm. I was a little behind on playing Fallout.
Yeah.
After it came out. I played it, but I had other games I was still finishing. I was out of town. I was busy. Didn't really have time to
Holidays,
sit and just play it. Mm-hmm. And the last few weeks, I've finally been able to sit and just play it. And that's all I played, mostly. But I did some digging. I was sort of like interested in the early days of Fallout because I know it's, originally it wasn't Bethesda. It was developed by these other people. And apparently before it was Fallout, before they chose this world of, destruction and this post-apocalyptic wasteland, it was apparently originally going to be like a fantasy RPG. Mm-hmm. And they also thought about possibly making it a game about time-traveling dinosaurs, apparently. I found out that from several sources, which...
time-traveling like would they be like anthropomorphic?
Yeah, it's like what I want to know more of that story. I couldn't really find that much more about it, but I read from several sources that there were time-traveling dinosaurs involved in the original.
It was originally made by Black Isle Studios, I think, were the original. It was actually, or maybe Interplay Interactive.
It was something.
It was one of those companies. I can't remember the creators. They're Obsidian now. Yeah. That's what they turned into, and they just got bought by Microsoft. They're doing that Outer Worlds game that looks similar. A lot of people are saying it's similar to New Vegas. To me, it looks similar to BioShock, just like the art style and everything.
They apparently, the game. The head game designer had to keep pitching for Fallout. Was like, please let me do this. Like they were going to shut it down several times. Like, no, we're not going to do this. And then, Dungeons and Dragons was really big. And
they did Dungeons and Dragons games that they did exclusively.
And they were like, well, maybe we should just cut Fallout and just put all of our focus into D&D and these kind of fantasy...
Baldur's Gate.
Yeah. And that was, again, the designer had to be like, please, just like, let us put this out.
Well, yeah.
And they did, but Fallout almost didn't happen because of Dungeons and Dragons. I thought that was interesting.
That is interesting.
Yeah, and then the whole time-traveling dinosaur thing. I would love
a time-traveling dinosaur RPG. I wonder what time periods.
Yeah.
What time? Like, first of all, is it like reality based, or are we talking like some like Doctor Who
Maybe
stuff?
Maybe they should like bring it back now.
Maybe they should.
Speaking of Doctor Who, the first two Fallouts had a lot of Easter eggs, and the TARDIS was in one of the games. So you could stumble upon the TARDIS, and when you got up close to it, it would disappear.
That's interesting.
Another fun fact.
The favorite thing that speaking of Doctor Who references is I saw a porta potty in Fallout 76, and we said we were going to talk about it, and it had a sign on it that said TARDIS.
That's right.
I enjoyed that a whole lot.
This is when we put in like a little. Kind of like a cut, like a little segue. It's like, this has been Fallout Talk with Dave and Austin. And
then we move on.
Yeah.
So with that, we're going to move it into our next segment.
Tell the truth, I ain't even sure I fully understand Dutch's plan with all this.
Like I said, John, when the time comes, you go.
What about loyalty to everything?
You've been loyal. I've been loyal. Look what that cost. All that ever mattered to me was loyalty. It's all I knew. It's all I ever believed in. Well, not anymore, John. Soon, you gotta go. Go. Don't look back.
I'll think about it.
I've done a lot of thinking. Look at us. Out here risking our necks and for what exactly? For a silly idea? Dumb exist.
Yeah, sharp like an edge of a samurai sword, the mental blade cut through flesh and bone. No more mind at peace.
Austin, before we get into this, I've got a forecast report, and it's showing that we have 100% chance of spoiling Red Dead Redemption 1 and 2.
To be fair, if you haven't played the first one by now, I have no
dingus,
pity. Like I don't feel sorry for you.
You doofed yourself.
I don't feel sorry for you at this point. It's been 8 years.
It's been It's been a while.
It's been a while. So if you haven't played that one, if you haven't played the second one, you get a little bit of slack, but play it before you listen to this. Or if you are a psychopath and just want to know what happens, keep listening.
And let me tell you something. I am one of those psychopaths that I'll be like, I will just be honest with myself a lot of the time. Be like, you know what? I'm not going to play that.
My little brother
I'm just going to listen to it. I don't care.
My little brother does that, but he does it with everything. Movies, video games.
Yeah.
I walk in and he's on the computer on YouTube watching like a breakdown of like a movie or like a Marvel movie, and I'm like, "Hey, bud, did you see that?"
I did that with Bird Box because I like.
Oh, I don't even want to get started on Bird Box.
Well, I did that with it. I was like, somebody put a review out, and I was like, "Don't watch this before you watch the movie." I was like, "Well, I'm not going to watch the movie, so I'll watch the review." And I'll watch the review, and I was like, "Well, I'll go and watch it."
I love Sandra Bullock. She will always hold a special place in my heart.
Anywho,
but that movie was not good.
Well, with Red Dead Redemption. Red Dead Redemption 2 and 1, both, but particularly 2, which just came out a few months ago, is very good.
Yes, I think that's an understatement. It is. I think it's historically good. Like it's.
You're
all in on Fallout, and
no. It's not even that. I have particular reasons. I think that the story of it is fantastic. I think that the missions and the events that occur are out of this world.
Yeah.
I think it should be like an Uncharted game, though. I feel like that it should just... You don't need an open world. What do you do in that open world? You don't do anything in that open world. You don't do anything.
I do.
You don't do anything in that open world.
I spent like 4 hours like 2 weeks ago just roaming around.
To me, they're making these missions. It feels like... It's like, I want it to be Uncharted, where I can just like go, experience the story. Or maybe like a smaller open world like God of War.
I feel like maybe I get what you're saying.
Yes.
The story was so good that it could be just mission, like it kind of pushes you through. You don't have to go do everything else.
Right.
But I feel like that the world they built is amazing.
It doesn't connect to anything, and that's just my opinion. It doesn't.
I personally.
It's pretty to look at. It's beautiful to look at.
Listen, like I said, I've spent hours just roaming around finding things.
Well, like the bounty system doesn't connect to anything. The hunting, it's like, what do you do other than just hunt the albino animals?
I don't necessarily like. I hunted the legendary stuff. I did that.
Okay.
And I did a few of the bounty things.
Yeah.
The online stuff, once they get this settled.
You're talking about the online portion?
No, I'm talking about the game itself, but I'm saying they also have the online open world, which is cool. I've played it.
I haven't even really delved into it.
It's pretty good. But
I only have time for one online game.
Like just main story, open world.
Yeah.
I think it's great. I personally have spent hours just going around and sort of just seeing what I can find, and every time I've played, I've found something new. I think it's cool, but on the other side, like I said, I see what you're saying.
Yeah,
that it could have also been done in a way where you don't have all of that.
Like there's no like rhyme or reason to the bounty system in the game.
The bounty thing is sort of weird. I think that was
you do this whole camp thing where you have camp with your friends and you talk to them and you're building your camp and you're getting resources for it and you're making friends with them and you're fulfilling stuff.
But I barely use the camp.
And then halfway through you're like, all right, camp's gone.
Yeah.
No more camp.
Yeah. It was sort of weird, and all I really ever used the camp for was if there was a mission there or if I needed to sleep. I would go back and sleep.
I would go, and that was probably my favorite thing, was I would go out and do a mission, and then I would come back to the camp, and then they would be talking about something and just be like, ragging on about something. I'd sit down, and they'd be like, oh, Arthur over here just being strong, silent type, acting all high and mighty, and he's like, I'm not high and mighty, and gets in this whole like conversation with him, and it feels very natural.
It's just so interactive. Like
Yes.
it's all very it's self-aware.
But then this piece that I really like, they just take it away.
Yeah. Camp was cool. It's just like I said, I didn't use it, I think, for the reasons that they maybe intended it to. But that, like you said, as you go on, it's like, oh, camp's just gone. Okay, well.
Okay, well, there
cool.
goes all that money I spent on.
Yeah, like I
camp.
dropped all this money because they freaking, every time I go back, that woman, the older woman with the hair up, would be like, well, you need to donate. You need to give us the money for this, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I don't see anyone else out doing anything. Like, I'm the only one that can contribute.
Have you ever heard of the saying, put the team on your back, dough?
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. I started to, and then I never got it. I got like one thank you. I got like one thank you. One thank you. Ungrateful, most ungrateful group of people I've ever met in my life. But I just, okay, so you have like New Orleans or Saint Denis, and you have...
We'll call a spade a spade.
Yeah.
You got New Orleans.
You got New Orleans. It's New Orleans. And then, you know, you have like the city life there and everything. You've got the small western towns. You got Valentine and Strawberry and kind of like a middle-sized town with Blackwater. Yeah. Like you have everything, and then you can just like, it's just crazy to me that they've put like, I mean, that map is huge.
It's a big map.
It's a huge map. And then you go up and you've got like Yellowstone, and you go up and it's sort of just like a coastal Appalachian town. Like it's very, I don't know. I just think it's amazing, and I can see why, you know,
it's
the game,
beautiful. It's beautiful.
I see why it took so long, because it's a lot
to
put in. And I'm excited to see, you know, what type of DLC they do. I think I'm going to, who knows? I'm going to give it some more time with the online.
If they do a zombies mode like they did for the other one, you can sign me up.
You know what's funny? I never played that. I just wasn't interested in it.
Oh my gosh.
After I beat Red Dead 1 and I finished the story.
Because you go and you got to get the four horses of the apocalypse, and you get one that's like, it puts fire down as it rides.
Because you go back into Mexico, right?
You go back into Mexico, yeah. It's like the reverse storyline, and there's like characters from the story of Red Dead 1 that are interacting with you that are talking about the zombie invasion and what that means. And
I just remember I've seen most, like I've looked into it, and I remember
my favorite thing is at the end of the game. So it seems like that the running gag at the end of every Red Dead game is you play as somebody different after the other person has died. So after John Marston died, you come back as zombie John Marston, and he comes up from the grave.
I remember
he's
that.
Like,
it's just I don't know, the whole. Like when I started as Arthur in the Red Dead 2, I really didn't like him that much. I was like, man, I love John Marston.
I would actually agree that he was pretty, like, he seemed kind of one note, and he was just there to support Dutch.
Yeah.
So
at the beginning, he was just so...
The layout of this gang is you've got Dutch, who's the leader of this gang of... What's the name of their gang? I forgot what they're called.
Just the Vanderlyn, I think.
The Vanderlyn gang, And so it's Dutch Vanderlyn. And so he's got his lieutenant, which is Arthur Morgan. And then he's got other people that he's brought
sort
in.
Of like he's just kind of like their father figure, but kind of like the cool dad that
you've got like
Rob's
Hosea and Micah and Uncle.
Hosea was kind of like, I feel like the grandpa that didn't have power, but he was like the old wise.
Yeah. You've got Charles, and it's like the Avengers. Yeah. Like, you know, you get the team together, but you've got Captain America and Iron Man.
Yeah.
Like
it was just at the beginning I missed, because as the game opens, you don't really see John. And I'm like, oh, man, because going into it, I was like, oh, we're going to get to see John.
Yeah.
And it opens up, and I'm like, oh, maybe, I guess it's already past when John left the gang.
It starts up in the mountains, and it's like they're trying to survive up there,
And I was like, man, Arthur's kind of, I don't really know how I feel about this. But by the end of the game, like, this spoiler alert here, I was devastated when Arthur dies.
Yeah.
I was... and I knew it was coming.
He's one of the best. He's the best character in that series.
Yeah.
Like by far.
Oh, absolutely.
He's the most well written in the series. His like and we introed with even one of his speeches for the segment, and like his like
thoughts and writing and voice actor and like everything related to this character is fantastic and is probably one of the best characters like written for a serious dramatic game of all time. Like,
because you see the character development as you progress through the missions, you just see his thought process changing about everything.
Well, it's like they start off. I mean, this gang starts off. They're on the run, but they still think that they are like, they just need to disappear. If they can just
Dutch has a plan. Dutch has
a plan, and Dutch will say that he has a plan.
Yeah.
And then they'll say we need one more score, and they go and do the score, and then they're like, we got an okay amount, but let me tell you guys, we just need one more score.
And then they hit it, and then something goes wrong that knocks them right back down.
Right.
And they have to build it back up.
But Arthur is such a friend to Dutch and throughout the whole series.
Loyal.
He's very, very loyal. And once he once he gets tuberculosis, like a lot of people in the West, like Doc Holliday, famous cowboy.
It amazes me how prevalent it was across the world in the 1800s.
In the 1800s,
I mean, when I took several English classes at Marshall of different poetry classes, and we had to learn about these poets, through the 17 and 1800s.
Right.
And it was like 1 in every 4 had tuberculosis.
Right.
And would move to, I guess, Italy, I think, to get, I guess, drier.
Drier air.
Yeah. And I guess it helped some of them.
Dry heat. Yes.
So it's sort of crazy.
It's the way that he handled it and the way that they wrote him in as somebody, even though he had tuberculosis, he was still like, he had to see this gang through. Like, he wasn't going to diverge from the path. He
wasn't telling anybody about it.
He didn't tell anybody that other than he told what's
Charles.
her face? But Charles,
when they were
and
on
then
the
he
horse.
told his lady friend. That's John's lady friend too.
Oh yeah.
I said that in a weird way, but
I can't remember.
I'm in my brain. I'm thinking Bonnie McFarlane, but that is incorrect.
Different game.
Sadie.
Yeah,
right?
Sadie Adler.
Yeah, Sadie Adler. Yeah, he told her.
It was kind of weird for me because when I was surprised I picked up on it, but I noticed like a small cough in cutscenes, like early on, just a small cough, and I was like, "That's weird." Video games. I was like, if he's coughing, there's a reason he's coughing, and I was like, well, maybe not. Yeah, I didn't hear him cough again for a while, and I heard it again, and my first thought was they're gonna give him tuberculosis. Like I just knew.
You just knew from
when
the
he started
get-go.
coughing.
Yeah.
I was like, he is gonna have tuberculosis. And I kind of started to piece it together, and I had a few different theories, and one of them was that he was gonna get really sick, and then you're gonna become John. Like I had a feeling when I was like, he's probably gonna do something to sacrifice himself because he's dying anyways, and boom. But I was pumped when it happened, but I was also extremely sad because I mean it's.
And then even before he has tuberculosis, he really cares about the people that he's with, and he's trying to find a good future for them. But especially once he gets it, he's like, you have to get out of this. Yeah. You have to leave.
He realizes everything he's been doing that is wrong.
It's like, I'm going to stay here with Dutch because Dutch is an idiot, but I'm going to stay here with him.
Yeah, but you guys run while you can.
Get out of here.
Yeah. And that's that. I think like that, as soon as you see that, I think that was when I was like, okay, yeah. Arthur, like deep down, is a good human being.
Yes.
But he's just been tied up in all of these things.
So I've got some stuff here. If you noticed, we introed with one of the intro songs from Samurai Champloo, which is a famous anime. I think the same guy who did Cowboy Bebop, if you watch that. It's by an artist called Nujabes. But there's a lot of similarities between cowboys and the samurai and their way of life and the time period and the trials and tribulations that they went through. And so I've got some information here just on stuff that I found about outlaws. So outlaws were actually coined by the Roman Empire. And I thought that this was interesting of how Dutch thinks in his brain, like how they are and how they're trying to live this life separate from everybody else. And so when you were classified as an outlaw in Rome, you were not to be provided services from the government, and people could kill you on sight. Like they were allowed to kill you on sight. When you were outlawed, you were essentially exiled from Rome. The English ended up bringing that back, and they had like Robin Hood, for example, wasn't an outlaw, but they essentially said that if you disobey the rules of the realm consistently, you were an outlaw, and that outlaws you from having social and government protection efficiently and giving you what they call a civil death. And so like any civic duties that you have, you die to that. And then the term wasn't used again until the 19th century when American newspapers were telling these like outlandish stories from the West and used the term outlaw to describe the bandits and stuff out in the West. So the Ronin, who are a lot similar to the outlaws, they were samurai. And so the Bushido Shoshinshu, which I'm sure that I will butcher, this is an episode where I will butcher everything Japanese that I've said, which is the code of the warrior for a samurai. When they had lost their daimyo, they were to commit seppuku, which is essentially they take a ritual blade and cut their belly and then drag it across and die.
It's a little dramatic. I feel like there could have been other things. They could have maybe
you had other options.
You could mourn.
Right.
You could maybe like get a tattoo. Maybe don't make me cut my insides out and die horribly on the ground.
Well, there is the other option. If you chose not to honor seppuku, you would then become a samurai who was on his own and socially outcast, known as a Ronin.
Like, dog, that sounds so much better. Like, why would you, like, I'm going to take my chances and just do that.
So without the social status that they had as samurai, as, like, warriors, they became mercenaries that, like, guarded trade caravans and acted as bodyguards. On the other side, the daimyo were powerful Japanese feudal lords who ruled most of Japan until, I think it's the Meiji period. They were essentially these landowners, and they controlled the provinces. But then when modern times happened, they merged into the aristocracy and were wealthy landowners and still live there. But the interesting thing about the Ronin in comparison to the cowboys is a lot of the cowboys and outlaws had that same, what's a good word for that? I guess it's the same like progression where you had these Civil War generals. Yeah. That once either the South lost or the war was over, they didn't have anything to fight for anymore. There was no they had some of the what they called the Indian Wars, which happened and against Native American tribes in the West. But outside of that, there was these guys that all they knew was fighting and bloodshed. Right. And without that, there was not much else to do other than continue to be in the military, be on the side of the law, which can be rather boring, or become a gunslinger or outlaw and either work for a railroad baron or be on your own trying to make your living out there. And so it seems very similar just from reading about it and from knowing it from like the films and movies and how they're very similar. The plight of the Ronin and the plight of the cowboy.
But still, going back, I still think about, so it was just literally your, what is it? Like, what did they call them? Like, their higher up,
daimyo.
Yeah. They die. They just die. And you have to kill yourself?
Yeah.
It's like I just picture a conversation like, okay, you can violently kill yourself or live in exile.
Or you could live in exile, yeah. And so that's why a lot
violently
of them
kill myself. I'm gonna super not do that and I'm just gonna not see you guys again.
Right.
Like I'm just gonna go live way across the land away from all of you because you think this is okay to just stab myself in the gut.
Or there's the story in the also now a Keanu Reeves movie called The 47 Ronin, where their daimyo dies and these 47 samurai become Ronin, and they're like, well, what do we do? Well, we should all commit seppuku. And they were like, well, why don't we just go kill the guy that killed him?
Yeah.
and then we'll all die. And then they went and tried to kill this guy, ended up killing him. Spoiler alert, they killed the dude. It's part of history, though. And then they all died. They all died through battle or by committing suicide at the end of it. So they were like, we got one more thing to do. We got to come back.
I just will never. I mean, I know it's like a part of a culture and tradition and this and that and the other. That's a culture right there.
Yeah.
I'm not going to ever get behind that. I think that one can just be left behind.
There was
in
a
history.
whole, it's interesting because there was a whole like code and a way of this, like people joke about the way of the samurai, but there was an actual like code that they lived by. And it's the same way for cowboys. There was the code of the cowboy. Yeah. That was a real thing. And there was this whole like, they had to be this way and they had to, be respectful to ladies and they had to carry themselves in a certain manner and they had to know how to shoot a gun. Like there was there's this set cultural definition to them that they all followed and all kind of lived by. Right. Like knights. Like the code for knights. Like chivalry and all that stuff. So I got to thinking about Dutch. And I got to thinking about how in this game he is like his gang is the last real gang in the West. Like, but by the end of the game,
they're holding on by a thread at this point.
He's the last one, and so it was like, where are those similar? Like, what inspired this? And I ran across an interesting piece of history that you may or may not already know. So this is about the Satsuma Rebellion. So the Satsuma domain was a Japanese province that had been influential in Restoration, which is that Meiji period, and became home to many ronin after military reforms and their obsolete status. So, like, a lot of the daimyo went to be a part of the aristocracy, and they didn't need their samurai anymore because they were living in a Western-inspired civilization. They were like, okay, well, we don't need all of these like samurai walking around. We're just you're fired, essentially in that aspect. But so just for reference, it's the what is it? I just lost my place. The Satsuma domain was the southernmost island. So it's like in the southwest of Japan. So for Satsuma, modernization means the abolition of privileged social status for the samurai class. So they didn't want to modernize. They wanted it the old way because they had more social clout in the old way. Saigo Takamori was one of the senior Satsuma leaders. He wanted to enact, and he was a part of the government and was influential. He wanted to enact his plan to travel to Korea to behave poorly enough to provoke a war. This war would then put the samurai to use in Korea and grant them an honorable death. So he essentially wanted to start a war just so he could send all the samurai and be like, go fight in this war and die.
Just get rid of them.
Yeah, just get rid of them and be of some...
He thinks he's slick. Like, he thinks that he's on it. Like, nobody's going to pick up on that.
Yes, to be of some use. But then the government rejected his plan. So essentially, after that, he quit. He was like, I'm done, and then moved back to his hometown of Kagoshima, along with many of the other Satsuma ex-samurai. So he, like, me and my boys, we're going home. Yeah. We're not screwing out with you. So Saigo, as he got older, would go on to open an academy where he would teach children not only like educational courses, but also military practices, weapon arts, that kind of stuff. So essentially training these children to be well-educated samurai, and ended up opening 132 branches of his private academies across the Satsuma region. So he essentially like had all the schools in Satsuma training these kids to be samurais. So the imperial government in Tokyo were concerned that the number and the training of the students was getting out of hand, and so they sent these ships of soldiers to confiscate all the weapons from the schools. The students didn't like that, and so they fought back, and they killed the Imperials, and they begged this Saigo fella. He was like, listen, man, they're trying to take all of our weapons. They're like, trying to take our arms. Come out of retirement and try to lead this revolution with us. And he was pretty reluctant about it, but eventually he decided to go. So he started the fighting and rallied 20,000 samurai to his cause, but after the first battle, he wrote to the government and begged them for a peaceful resolution, and the government was like, we're going to ignore you. So Saigo was continued to lose battles because the Imperial army was just so much more technologically advanced than his army of samurai. Like they were using guns and weaponry and were fortified by a lot of. They brought in people from the West to kind of help train these people in the art of war. So Saigo was pushed back to Kagoshima, where his forces were heavily wounded, leaving him only 40 rebel samurai. So one of his followers, Beppu Shinsuke, aided Saigo in committing seppuku before he was captured. Beppu then led the last of the samurai to draw their swords in a final raid downhill towards the imperial positions. With these deaths, the Satsuma Rebellion came to an end in 1877, as well as the end of all of the samurai in Japan. Saigo was remembered by the people of Japan as a tragic hero, though. And on February 22nd, 1889, which was, I guess, 12 years later, Emperor Meiji pardoned Saigo posthumously. So they were like, you tried to write to us, you tried to be, kind to us, you tried to find a peaceful resolution, we ignored you, so you are now pardoned after you're already dead. So I thought that was an interesting piece of history of how Dutch is kind of like he has gathered the last of these great cowboys together, and he's kind of said, okay, this is our little domain. We're just going to try to find our little spot. But when the government shows up, other people want to fight back.
Yeah.
And so it's like he becomes this hero and this leader of the people and very, very wise. I think that from what I could tell, Dutch is kind of almost his creation is kind of inspired by that, but in a more tragic manner. So while Dutch thinks that he's the wise leader, the one that has the plan, the one that's going to find them their promised land so that they can go away and lead the life that they want to lead, he's actually not, and he's very selfish for his own reasons. The historical portion of that, though, was actually covered in the famous movie The Last Samurai with Tom Cruise. And so that's about Tom Cruise's character essentially goes and tries to train the Imperial army, gets captured by the samurai army, and then learns to live with them and about samurai culture, and then essentially goes through the battle and doesn't die, but then ends up meeting the emperor and essentially says, you need to remember your roots. Like, you need to combine your new way of thinking with your old tradition. And the emperor listens, and that was the point of the story. I think Tom Cruise ended up living in Japan in the movie itself. So I just thought it was incredibly poignant to learn that, Dutch is the last of the cowboys. He has got his people. And if he would have had his way, he would have sent them to their deaths. Yeah. He would have had that's his,
he started out as such a good character. I at the beginning of the game, I was like, wait, that's Dutch? Because in Red Dead 1, you hate him. You're like, oh, he's a madman. He's a terrible person. But you start out the second one, you're like, I kind of like him. He's not bad. And he's very...
he's personable. But then when somebody goes down, he doesn't save them because he believes that it's always the final stand and it's heroic, but he won't sacrifice himself to the cause.
Yeah, exactly.
So samurai films have a very particular lineage that they go on to inspire throughout the ages, just like jazz music does with the music in the 1950s onto the Beatles and so on and so forth. You've got that progression, but from samurai films, you've got cowboy films who, when you have the Seven Samurai, that inspired the Magnificent Seven, almost as a remake within that lens, which it just had another remake of the Magnificent Seven with, I think Chris Pratt was in there.
It was pretty good.
Wasn't Denzel Washington in there? That was good. Right. It was fun.
It wasn't bad. I mean, it was a fun movie. It wasn't a great movie.
Wasn't like a real banger, you know. It was good. But one of the major films that inspired the Western films, samurai films, and especially the Seven Samurai was Star Wars. And I think that there is a very similar family dynamic of the main characters in Star Wars to that of Red Dead Redemption. So I kind of want to talk about that a little bit. So the stuff that I have down here is obviously Obi-Wan Kenobi and Luke Skywalker. Their relationship is very similar to Arthur and Jon's. So, he's kind of always telling them, just chill out. Don't get so angry. You need to not be so brash. You need to not make these split-second decisions. You need to, chill out and be smart and think about stuff. And he always calls, and it's not as caring or as nice as Obi-Wan Kenobi himself.
But it's wise. It's wisdom, and he's trying to
harsh wisdom.
Yeah, it's kind of like
calls
if
Jon, you're an idiot.
It's like if Obi-Wan did several years of like hard drugs and
right. It's like if Obi-Wan and John Wayne mixed together.
Yeah, just like a real hard life, Obi-Wan, and
calling Luke an idiot and a dumbass would be the go-to. And I thought it was interesting that it paralleled at the end when they are trying to escape this mountain that they are fighting on. Arthur looks at Jon and is like, you need to go save yourself.
Yeah.
I'm going to die here fighting this enemy. Yeah. Fighting the things that you were trying
and then passes his hat on to him.
Right. Much similar to how Obi-Wan passes on his items as well as, but obviously not his robe because his robe, disappears.
Gone
as it goes down.
It's sort of this passing of the torch. Like, I'm going to die now. I'm going to sacrifice myself, essentially. Do your thing.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that Dutch is very reminiscent of Darth Vader in a sense, because Darth Vader has this plan, wants people to join him, is ruthless, but like talks to Luke all the time. He's like, you can be with me. This is our thing. This is our, our empire together. But then from the other end, Jon is also a lot like Kylo Ren in comparison to him and like Dutch being Luke. And so
I could almost see Arthur having some Kylo Ren traits too, though. And maybe in the sense of, I think he at times realizes
what's going on.
It's like, I could be good. Like, I could be doing good things.
Right.
And he does do good things in some ways. But like, I think he, similarly to how Kylo Ren has these moments of just being torn, like I could be really good right now. Like I could join the good guys and start doing good things. But like he's so rooted in like kind of being that bad guy. And so I could kind of see both of them.
I could see both of them, but I think that the story is more parallel to Jon, where Kylo Ren is, I guess, implored or is motivated to go and kill Luke, and is dragged out to this snowy, salty mountain where he has to kill his master, and he is like having an emotional breakdown.
Yeah.
Because he knows that he is going to. But that mirrors Jon and Dutch in Red Dead Redemption 1, where it's like he doesn't want to do this, but he doesn't want to see him continue and go against what he's built, this civilization. And so it's kind of like almost a role reversal in that aspect, or not necessarily a role reversal, but a moral reversal between Dutch and Jon as opposed to Luke and Kylo.
Yeah.
There's a family dynamic. I think that's one of the things that they made with Red Dead Redemption 2 is what is this gang, what is a family, and how Western sagas and these, Japanese films, sci-fi films, all are basis on getting the gang together, and the gang is your family. Whether it be by blood or by a common creed or by just your goals aligning. I mean, you see that people really hated. Oh, what was it? Solo. People really hated that. But if you watch it,
I still haven't seen it actually.
If you watch it, it is a Western movie. It is like train robbery and like horse chases and we're gonna go to the gambling den and meet with the other cowboys there. Like,
I just feel like they didn't do a great job of casting Han Solo, like to look anything like.
I think once you watch it, I think you'll feel differently about him. He doesn't look necessarily like him, but he's got all the mannerisms down. And if you can do all the mannerisms, you're fine.
I like Donald Glover a lot, so that's why I want.
Well, he was the best part of that.
Yeah,
film,
I love Donald Glover, so I want to see that mostly just for him,
But those films in general and their dynamic, I think that you can't do a modern Western now. Like, you can't go back and do a modern Western without thinking about Star Wars or without thinking about the movies that wanted to inspire it. It's like, you can't.
There's no other way to do it. Like, there's the themes and the influences are there. You can make your own story, but there's always going to be kind of like callbacks to different samurai movies, Western movies, Star Wars. I mean, there's all three probably at some point will be in that movie.
Right. And then if you really want to get crazy, you make a movie called Cowboys and Aliens that doesn't do very well.
Yeah. That was an interesting one.
That
was an interesting one.
But I always thought that those connections and stuff were what was important, and that's what drove for me. That's what drove the story was John and Arthur's connection. And what was Arthur going to do with Dutch? Like, what was he trying to impart to John? And what was he trying to pass on to John? And what did it work? Did he follow Arthur's advice? And it's like, at the end of the day, like, you know what happens next. You've played the first one. If you played the second one, you know that it's like some of that. Yeah, it's like he got out of there, but he also like carried this weird baggage with him and never really got over the killing.
Yeah,
aspect.
That's what it's kind of crazy. It was crazy to me that I knew exactly what was going to happen,
right,
for most of the game, but it was still like a surprise as everything played out. But it's just it's crazy to think about how similar the Westerns to the samurai movies are, because I think a lot of people don't really think about it. And even like when I was watching Westworld, and I talked to you about this before, watching Westworld, and they go to Shogun World, and that's my favorite episode outside of the one with the Native Americans. Yeah, it was just like this weird. I was like, because it ends the episode before it with them walking to this campfire, and this samurai just comes running out of the woods with a sword at them.
And you've been in Western world. This whole
you've
time
been in the
Cowboys.
Wild West for a season, and this was in the second season, wasn't it? I think
it's the second. Yeah, second.
Yeah,
season,
so you've been in it for a season and 2 or 3 episodes.
Yeah,
and then here comes a samurai running through the woods.
Yes,
and then so it was cool to see them see their counterparts and become self-aware that that is my storyline in this world.
In
like,
this
it's
person,
the same,
and even the same. Like if you listen to it, they do a Western version of Paint It Black for that robbery scene, and then when they do it in Shogun World, they do it with the traditional Japanese instruments, and they play a cover of Paint It Black, and you can tell whose characters are which. And they've got the Western characters prisoner, and they're all like weirdly confused. And they're like, "Wait, that's me. Yeah. I do that. I say that line. I
that's
do that
my line." Because the guy was like, "Well, I couldn't just write completely new lines. Like I had to give him the same stuff." So it's just it's kind of
very
cool.
On the nose comparison.
Yeah, it's like it's literally everything we just talked about, but in a few episodes of TV, showing you how similar all of this ties together.
So what I'm saying is that season 3 they're going to go to Star-Lord land. And
what there is going to be a season 3, I'm assuming, but like what the hell are they going to do?
I have no clue what
it's
they're
just
going to
do. It's just going to spoiler alert again. Sorry if you haven't watched Westworld.
I have no clue what they're going to do.
They're just going to kill humans. Like I think they're going to go to like our world. It's just going to be real world.
Real world.
Like just slaying everyone.
They did Westworld, then they did Eastworld, and now they're going to do
I don't know, man. It's going to be a wild ride. God only knows. Well, in the forest fires, their set burned down. So they're kind of
everything.
Who knows?
Real world.
It's going to be crazy. It's
a reality TV show
of them just murdering humans and just running down the street. That's going to be it.
Oh, goodness. Well, Austin, I think that's deep enough for today. We want to thank you for listening to today's show. Follow the podcast on social media at STAKEOUT Podcast. Follow myself, Dave, at Chaffins, and that's CHAFFINZZZ. This is 3 Z's so you don't fall asleep. or if you are falling asleep so that you enjoy it. And Austin at O'Connor93. That's at OCONNOR_93. Don't forget to check out our other podcast, Vault Boys WV, as we cover the lore and the real history of Fallout 76 every other week. Join us next time as we delve even deeper into games that you love from across the digital media.